Maybe. And now for the Drew Sutton Leadership Show, lighting the way with real leaders, real stories, and real impact. Because when leaders stop growing, the darkness wins. All right, welcome to another amazing episode of the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. Today's guest, Luke Embree, is a dynamic pastor, entrepreneur, and leadership scholar who's reshaping how churches and nonprofits thrive in today's world. Overseeing a network of churches across Fayette and Jessamine counties, Luke brings a rare blend of spiritual leadership and business savvy. He's currently completing a doctorate in leadership with a focus on crafting innovative solutions for the challenges faced by mission-driven organizations. A husband, a father of three, and proud Lexington local, Luke is also the founder of a coaching and consulting agency designed to help social entrepreneurs and nonprofits build sustainable, multi-stream revenue models. His passion, empowering purpose-driven leaders to do good, make money, and help others do the same right here in the city he loves. So with that, welcome to the show, Luke.
Gosh, hey, everyone. Are we on?
The button. There we go. Yeah, we're on. Hey,
it's great to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation, Drew. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Yeah, man. So we met at a LinkedIn local, which was super fun. And I immediately knew I wanted you on the show because you are living one of my deep passions, which is how do we as moral people, as Christian people, serve others in our daily life, not just in our spiritual life on Sundays.
Yeah. Well said.
Go.
I was just going to say, you and I were able to connect last week, and it was great to see what kind of overlap we have as far as our vision and our desire to improve the city and to use business to do that.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump right in here and throw a right hook here towards traditional ministry. Actually, I'm not. I deeply love all the ministers that do their work, but somewhere along the lines, there's been an idea that our religion needs to stay in a box. The way that you morally believe in needs to live over here in the corner, and you need to be a regular person. Like, you can believe whatever you want, just don't let it come out. And I don't really think that's a thing. I think that what you believe should drive basically everything that you do. In fact, it does drive everything that you do.
Yeah.
And then also we'll have a chat about money and some of the lies that run across money. But let's just start with, is it possible to believe something only on Sunday?
No. Short answer, no, it's not. Two problems with that, what you just described. And the first one is like the most blatant, and it doesn't work. The reality is that we do live out our beliefs, whatever they are, Sunday through Saturday. We might be able to compartmentalize certain aspects of our lives and say, okay, on Sunday, this is going to be my focus. I'm a churchgoer. I'm a husband, father. But no matter what we truly believe is going to work itself out through our week. And so on the surface, it just doesn't hold water. But as important, it's not healthy to try.
Yeah.
What we find is that as human beings, we need to have a sense of integration in our lives. And to the degree that we actually are separating out certain parts of ourselves for this group or for that group or for this goal or that goal, we're actually sort of bifurcating our own souls. And the result of that is confusion, frustration, disappointment. The reality is it's very unhealthy to try to live a life that isn't fully integrated. So number one, it's
yeah. No, here's what I love about that is I think the bringing religion into the conversation makes a couple of people clench up, and then for those of us that live a very devout life,
sure.
Maybe we're embarrassed about talking about it because of the words that are in society. So let's pull back from just your beliefs religiously. A work-life balance. I talk about this all the time. All of my mentors I've ever had, all of the clients I've ever had, they bring up at some point, well, how do you manage your work-life balance? And my answer to that is immediately, are you alive at work?
Right.
And they're like, well, I mean, yeah, technically, but I don't really feel engaged. I'm like, okay, well, that's the problem, is this lack of integration and authenticity across all your spectrums.
Yeah.
So you you have to find a way. I'll just talk the secular conversation, which is how you live at work should engage you. You should be proud of your work. You should be proud of the way that you do it. You should be proud of the way you treat others and your clients and your customers and your peers, so that when you come home, you live a life of dignity, where your life and your work are just a spectrum of inspiration. And then and your personal beliefs about morality are really questions of how you treat one another, how you show up at work, how when you're at work, what do you work well? The work that you're doing, is it honorable? Those questions. So I'll throw the kind of the conversation over to you, and then we'll switch into how do you live a life? How do you live out your faith at work?
Yeah, no, good questions. Ideally, the things that you hold to be the most valuable, your morals, your worldview, is working itself out throughout your week and how you work and so forth. There's been a lot of conversation, especially in the last decade or so, of what work-life balance looks like. There's a lot of people, as I'm sure you're aware, Drew, who are kind of moving away from that terminology. In my experience, sort of the way I look at it, it's hard. It's hard to think in terms of balance, because again, what balance requires us to do is to compartmentalize, right? I've got my home life, I've got my work life, I've got my time with my friends and so forth, and I'm trying to keep this in some kind of cosmic scales of balance, right? But life just doesn't tend to work that way. And so the metaphor that I've been using a lot more is seasonality, and this is what I'll share. Yeah, seasonality. And this is what I'll share with my employees at work, is there are going to be times in our job, right, when the business is just booming and it's all hands on deck, and we need to be present here. And we'll be working longer hours, we'll be working longer weeks. But if we're doing this well, there should also be seasons in which things slow down. And the temptation, especially for people who are really, really productive and really sort of geared towards success, right? The temptation is to feel guilty when things slow down, like, oh my gosh, I should be doing something. And we kind of get busy. But the reality is, it's actually a natural cycle that we see in nature, right? We see times of vibrant growth. We see times of dormancy, but we never suggest that when the leaves fall off of the trees in the fall, that there's something unhealthy about the trees, right? They're going dormant. They're going into a natural cycle of rest.
Yes.
Right. And so I think seasonality is a much better metaphor than work-life balance. There will be times in which you really need to focus more of your attention on your job. There's going to be times in which you need to focus more of your attention on family. Our parents get older and we need to give them some more attention. Our marriage may be in a season in which we need to give more attention. Our kids are in these delicate areas of their growth in which we need to give them more attention. But if a life is well balanced, if a life is in harmony with these seasons, then those are seasons. And there is room. I just have this confidence that there's room to care for everything that's important in our lives. But it takes intentionality. And I think that's another big piece of this idea of a balanced life, is the question, are we prioritizing what is truly important to us? Because unless we have that question answered, then every other question after that doesn't really make sense. You're not going to be able to get to the answers you want.
Yeah, let me maybe rephrase that for a second. I hear this a lot. I know that my family is really important, and I'm going to prioritize that soon. Is a statement that it's not the priority now. But I love your seasonality, because a lot of the answer is not, you can't do everything you're supposed to be doing. At any one given moment, I should be serving the poor, I should be praying, I should be reading my Bible and meditating while I also serve. Like, you can't do everything all at once. We have to live life across time. So I love that idea of seasonality. I've been kind of meditating on something similar to that. But I love that phrasing. I actually wrote it down here, seasonality. I love that. I think that's cool.
Yeah. And I think that goes right back to priorities. And that's why priorities have to be front and center. You hear people be like, I've got like 6 priorities I'm working right now. What they're really saying is, I have no priorities right now. Because you can't have 6 priorities.
You can't have 6 priorities by definition.
Right, by definition. And so to be very intentional about building a life that really revolves around those priorities is going to enable you to lean into those seasons in a healthy way. But that doesn't happen just accidentally. If we just allow our lives to sort of accidentally grow, then other people's priorities, other urgencies are going to seep in. And we're not going to have that kind of life that allows us to really enjoy the fruits of our labors, right? Which is our time with our family, et cetera.
So yeah, I'm gonna pull on the intentionality idea.
Yeah, please.
In the reverse, actually, I find that people really like the end of clever statements. For instance, get the right people in the right seats.
Yeah.
That's the really warm and fuzzy side of that sentence. But the first part of that sentence, it comes from Jim Collins' is Good to Great,
Mhm.
is get the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty harsh. And then once you have the right people on the bus, get them in the right seats. Well, we all want to focus on the warm fuzzy side and not on the more harsh
Yeah.
side.
Right.
Similar thing happens in the secular versus religious divide, which is the idea of a Sabbath. So people will say, well, I can't work on Sunday or Saturday or whatever because it's like you can't work on the Sabbath,
Sure.
which is the warm fuzzy side of the statement. But the whole sentence goes like this: on 6 days you shall work, and on the seventh you shall rest. And I think a lot of people don't intentionally manage the 6 day part, which is getting stuff done. And and then when they haven't gotten everything done, they haven't been intentional, they haven't prioritized, then they want to use the Sabbath as the excuse to just put it off until tomorrow.
Yeah. 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 And that's true. There's another trap on the other side of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that is to hustle hard 6 days and then to crash out on the Sabbath. Right.
Yeah.
That there's some people, and I'm guilty of this. This is something that I've recently been kind of convicted of. I'm kind of reevaluating. How do I do Sabbath?
Yeah.
Because, to come from that Christian point of view, from that Judeo-Christian point of view, where the Lord in Scripture describes what Sabbath is. Sabbath is a time of restoration. But oftentimes, if we're so exhausted by the time that seventh day hits, we're not actually restoring. We're actually kind of going into a coma. Right?
Yeah.
We're so exhausted. We can't, the kids are bugging us, can you please not mow the lawn right now? I'm trying to take a nap, right? We are basically withdrawing into ourselves. And that's not really what the Sabbath is supposed to be.
I love that. Yeah. Cause you could sit there and doom scroll for 3 hours and feel no more rested than you were.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
All right. So in a world of anxiety, so we have an epidemic of anxiety. We have an epidemic of loneliness. We are more connected than we've ever been.
Sure.
And yet we are more lonely than we've ever been.
Yeah.
Is Sabbath potentially the answer there? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think Sabbath is part of the answer. But again, I'm going to go back to intentionality and priorities. And I think it really has to begin with value set. So when I started my company, I own a commercial cleaning business, and we can go into that because it is an expression of my faith and my desire to do good in the world. But when I started it, I had no business background, I had no business experience, and I started listening to the gurus, the podcasters, the wise women and men out there in the stratosphere. And I tuned into one guy in particular, Mike Campion, and Mike really encouraged those people who were starting a business, and in particular a cleaning business. That was Mike's gig, and that's mine as well. He said, you have to start with values, because values then determine who's on the bus and who's off the bus. Values then determine where do I spend my time and attention and resources. Values determine everything else. And one of the biggest flaws I think that entrepreneurs and business owners begin with is not establishing right up front and center, what do I value more than anything else? Because there's two different sides to goal setting. There's what it looks like to accomplish a goal, and then I heard this recently, and I can't recall who I heard this from, but they talked about the anti-goal, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's goals and anti-goals, right? Let's imagine that I love playing guitar, and I'd love to play guitar professionally. I'd love to be a star, right? Like I want to be a star, right? And so I work really hard. I do all the things, and I make it, right. And now I'm a star. But in the journey from point A to point B, I've tanked my marriage. My kids won't talk to me, and I've got a terrible drug habit. Have I really met my goal, right? And so what an anti-goal is an anti-goal says, these are the things I'm not willing to sacrifice on my way to reach my goal. And it's really important to have both in focus so that we can truly hit our goals and not find that once we get to the top of the mountain, we're completely bankrupt and are unable to enjoy the view. If that
Yeah. Actually, I love that goal, anti-goal. I have a slightly different take on anti-goals, which is when you know what you're not willing to do and you know how much money that could have made you if you did it, you in fact know how much you're willing to pay to maintain your soul. So I find that useful. Originally the temptation came as I have to give that up, or my morals are costing me this much. And so now you're forced into this kind of martyrdom scenario, or you're just hyper aware of how much you're paying because you're not willing to do that unsavory business practice. But if you flip it and you say, this is how much my soul is worth, it is not worth the extra $10,000 I'm going to make on that project, or the 5,000, or whatever the number is. It becomes actually super empowering, because then people offer you money later for a different compromise, and you're like, I've paid 10 times that much not to be compromised. I'm not gonna I'm not going to do that for $400. You're ridiculous. My soul's worth more than that.
Yeah. Excellent point. I recently, quite literally, just had that scenario play out in my business.
There you
go. We were offered a contract that was, it would have more than doubled the size of our company, right?
Right.
But the people that we were working out the negotiation with wanted to really lowball us. And effectively, they wanted us to take this one job at cost for the privilege of being able to make a little bit of money on these other jobs, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so what do, right? Like, I want to grow my business. I have the opportunity to make more jobs. These are all goods, right? But we have 4 simple stated values in our company: show up, do good, make money, empower others. And we feel like if we do these 4 things really well, that our company is going to succeed, and we're going to hit our ultimate mission, which, all of those sit on a bedrock of dignity, effectively.
Yeah.
What they were asking us to do was to compromise our 3rd value: make money, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with making money. And one of the reasons I made that one of our core central values is because I knew that would be the easy one for me, right? For me to compromise on, to expediently hit another goal. But the reality is, when you start compromising on any of these values, you're actually undermining your long-term ability to do what you want to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So if I took that contract, right, which we would have made a little bit of money on in the aggregate, right, I would have undermined my ability to long-term do the kind of good that I want to do in the city, because I would have had to have been so stressed about the bottom line, about the margins, about keeping. And I don't want to treat my employees like that. And I certainly don't want to compromise on the quality that we deliver to our clients. And so compromising on the one value would really set me up to compromise in other ways that I was uncomfortable with. But it's hard. I'll tell you, it's hard to say no to that much money, right?
It is. Yeah, it totally is.
Even if cognitively, this is not really as much money as it appears to be, it's hard to say no to those dollar signs.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk dollar signs. You have a background of being a pastor. You actually lead a network of churches. And yet you said, no, I want to be in the business place. Do pastors have a place in the business world? And so talk to me about that.
Yeah, we all have a place in the business world, brother. There's room for everybody here in the business world. The question I think before us is there a way, is there an avenue for us to enter into the business world and accomplish what we want? I think that's the primary question, because business, what I've come to recognize, and again, I don't have a business background. My background is in divinity and pastoral ministries. And so I came to all this new, but what I came to recognize is that business is a neutral tool. It's a tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a tool to help us to accomplish what we desire, right? And so some businesses are really specially made to hit one set of goals. Other businesses are really well designed to hit other sets of goals. The question, again, is going to come back down to that intentionality and priorities. What is it you want to accomplish? And so what I wanted to accomplish, and the whole idea behind the business and behind my coaching and consulting, which basically is to do good and make money, right? That's my whole shtick. I have this conviction that it is possible to do good and make money. And the reason I came to that point is because as a pastor in that not-for-profit world, I encountered so many talented, driven, educated, smart, right? People who were giving 110%, right? They were giving their all to this mission that they love to serve, right? And they were basically like just below the poverty line, right? Like, and what that produced was an inability to really fulfill their mission, because ultimately, the bills do pile up, right? You do need to pay your rent or your mortgage. Your kids do need braces, and they should be able to get it, right? Like, you should be able to not have to compromise. You should be able to say, I want to do good in the world, and my kids should be able to get braces, right? Like, that's not unreasonable. I should be able to have health insurance, right? That's not an unreasonable desire or goal. But the way not-for-profit is structured is it's almost as though making money and doing good are incompatible. And you really kind of have to choose one or the other. And so I found myself in this kind of camp as a pastor. I really love the people who I serve, my congregation. They're brilliant, man. I love everything about them. They're interesting. They're excited. A lot of them are coming to our church from unchurched backgrounds, or maybe they've been hurt by the church and they're needing people. A lot of them are poor. And I love everything about that demographic and serving that demographic. They make terrible tithers. and so in the church world, unfortunately, everything is kind of built on this idea of getting enough tithers in your congregation so that you can do what you want to do and ultimately pay your bills and your salary and so forth. And that model didn't work for me. And so I began to explore, would it be possible to create a for-profit business that would free me, that would give me the freedom to do what I love for free? That's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to be a pastor for free. And so in looking at all the different types of businesses out there, right? Like, businesses are tools and they can accomplish different things. It depends on what you want. I created a criteria of what a business would need to look like in order to provide the freedom that I need to do good and continue to pay my mortgage, right?
Right.
And that's why I'm in the cleaning business. Cleaning really checked all those boxes. It was easy to get into. There was not a whole lot of upfront investment. It's highly delegatable, which is a really important component to a business for what I needed it to be. And so it checked those boxes. And so back, 4.5, 5 years ago, I started this experiment and really was kind of curious, can this accomplish what I need it to accomplish? And I'm grateful that after a few years, I can say, yes, business can accomplish what you want it to, but you have to be very intentional at the front. You have to be very intentional in the middle. You have to be very intentional all the way through it in order to ensure it's helping you to hit your goals.
Yeah, I love that. I think I've been on several church boards, and so you get a behind the scenes view of the business of the church. And I think it's slightly ironic, or at least poetic, that you're a cleaning company, that you're for profit, because churches are kind of a cleaning company, spiritually speaking.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, because the keeping the money flowing to keep the doors open, to keep everybody paid, to keep enough staff paid to do the things that people like, it is a business. And I remember I was in one church meeting, and the phraseology was giving units. So it was a convenient version of saying family members, because that family unit is the giving unit, which is a business statement, whereas the souls are a different statement. And if you have a 5-person or a 6-person family, there's a bunch of kids that need certain ministry, and then there's adults that need different types of ministry. But yeah, the activity of church is expensive, of spiritual care is expensive, and it's essentially provided for free, or at least voluntary donation style. And so finding the people that can support it can become the central activity like most nonprofits, they spend all of their time generating donations or soliciting donations so they can do a little bit of work of the
Yeah.
donations actually.
Yeah.
Um, how do you balance from a time perspective? You talk about intentionality.
Mhm.
How do you balance? Because you did this so you could have freedom to minister to those that need it and maybe can't afford it. How do you balance your time between running a business, which needs leadership,
Yeah.
and giving away your time for free to those who aren't immediately beginning to be giving back to you?
Yeah. I think that's a fine question and appropriate. I first kind of want to go back to the idea that churches are businesses, and I'm not arguing with you that's certainly the way church gets approached a lot of times. I think as a Christian who believes fundamentally that everyone is made in the image of God, I find that really reductive and really actually dehumanizing. And I'm
Yeah,
not like
absolutely.
this is the way churches talk. I mean, I'm not even denying that this is the way
Yeah, yeah,
talk. But I think that right off the bat, they're off base and they begin to compromise the gospel, which is that everyone is made in the image of God and that we have a God who's redeeming us, who's recreating us into that image. It right away compromises the most fundamental part of the good news. And so it's really unhelpful. And so when we talk about business and when we talk about the church, we have to recognize that there are certain expectations and certain sort of constraints in each one that are unique and different, right? It's not
okay,
that they're compatible, but they're unique and different. And we need to respect both of those spheres. Now, having said that, there is a lot of there's a lot of principles that are overlapping in both. And you mentioned leadership, right? I lead a company that
hmm,
it's a secular. I don't have a Jesus fish on my company logo, and I don't want one. I really don't find that helpful in any sense of the word. But it does require leadership, and I am a Christian. And so within this company, my values, right, the values that are important to me as a Christian, which really, like I said, come down to this idea of human dignity, must be expressed in and throughout the culture, right? And so showing up, doing good, making money, and empowering others are expressions of this idea, this conviction that I have that everyone deserves dignity. Not just my employees, but my clients, right? Not just my clients, but the vendors whom I work with, that everybody in this equation deserves that kind of dignity. And that's a Christian conviction, right? That's
yeah,
coming
totally.
from a very particular worldview that I possess. And I recognize that not everybody in the business world does possess that, but I do. And my company is going to reflect that.
Yeah, right.
Now we go over to the church as well, right? The church is also built on fundamental principles and values that hopefully, if it's a Christian church, are coming from that Christian tradition, right?
Yeah,
And that church needs to be led with those convictions in mind as well. Now, the biggest difference between church and business that I found, and it's dramatic, is that the business of the church is enormously inefficient.
mm,
And there's no getting around it because people are inefficient, people are messy, and the goals of the gospel are ultimately to restore people.
yeah,
So what that is going to require is a lot of patience, a lot of care, a lot of conversations, right? That don't feel like they're being productive. And for someone like me who's really productive oriented, that was a struggle for me as a pastor. And I'm coming to reconcile myself with it now. But it was a real struggle for me in the early days because I was doing all this pastoral ministry and not feeling productive. But what I was doing was I was walking alongside of God's Spirit in this mission of restoring the world. And God's timetable is just way different from mine, right?
mm,
Now, when I leaped over to the business side of my life, I was able to discover that, man, you do X, Y, and Z, and A, B, and C can be expected to result pretty quickly. There's a really clear connection between cause and effect in the business world. And I really like that. I think it's one of the reasons I really enjoy business.
yeah,
And so both of them are possible. Both of them share overlapping values and sort of principles, but they are uniquely different animals. And to do each one well, you have to understand what those opportunities and constraints are within each community, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I love that you bring up both have a different mission statement,
Yeah.
which is critically important to understand. The church's job is to continuously proclaim the good news and to set a standard of righteousness and a standard of morality to live by. Because when society as a whole begins to adopt that level of morality, for instance, and we'll just use a straw man here. If I can leave my bike without a bike lock on it, and I can trust that you're not going to steal my bike, a lot of efficiencies begin to accrue.
Yeah.
Right. If I can generally trust my fellow man, which is a religious activity, because the morality of the tide of morality has reached a certain spot, there's a huge amount of and then if you don't have people damaging each other, again, straw man, if if I just don't go around punching people, then we don't have a lot of hospital needs. There's not people that have been punched, right? So the church has a different product than business does, and I love that.
Yeah.
What is the difference that you've seen between leading volunteer organizations and for-profits? My joke, in leadership coaching, oftentimes nonprofits will tell me, but we have volunteers. To which I say, all of your employees are volunteers, the paid ones and the non-paid ones, because I've paid lots of people who don't do any work.
Yeah. People, in my experience, this may sound a little bit cynical, but people are primarily motivated by profit and pain.
Okay.
Very, very rarely, unfortunately, do you find people really motivated by virtue. There are people out there who really want to live a virtuous life, and that's their motivation. But by and large, I apologize for sounding cynical, people are motivated by profit and pain. That is really clear and unapologetic in the business world, in the for-profit world. That is exactly what the for-profit, especially in sort of a capitalistic commercial economy, that's entirely what it's built on, right? That people are motivated by what they can get and avoiding what is going to hurt. And so within those clear terms, for-profit businesses, like one of the things I like about for-profit business is it's just really upfront about it, right? It's like, I want to improve your life so that you'll give me X amount of dollars, right? Nothing personal. This is just the way it works, right? In the not-for-profit side, it is based very much on volunteers. And it's important to recognize that I think, and there's nothing wrong with this at all. There's nothing wrong with the reality that volunteers are receiving some benefit.
Yes.
From the time they're giving, right? And it may not be monetary, and it may be monetary. I serve with a number of churches, and the staffs of those churches get paid, but they get paid nowhere near what they're worth on the open market, right? That they're not doing it for the pay. They're doing it because they want to do good in the world. And that in itself is a reward, right? To see families, to see families coming together and being healthy and strong is a good into itself. And it's a reward to know that I got to be in some small way a part of that, right?
Yeah.
When we talk about volunteers, just even setting up chairs on a Sunday morning, right? For some of these churches that don't have a location, to tear down and set up them, which is a huge pain, right? They do it joyfully because they recognize that by setting up these chairs, I am weaving my life into a much bigger picture that involves other people that I really love and value. And that is a reward to me, right? So you're absolutely right. Both are getting paid in a sense, right? And I think it's important to keep that in mind on both sides of that equation, right? If you are in this not-for-profit, then your primary voice to your employees and to your volunteers should be, thank you. We recognize there's so many things you could be doing right now, and we're really grateful that you're doing this. And by the way, your contribution here is helping us to achieve this. And that's what we're all here for, right?
Right.
But likewise, and I see, and I interact with a lot of business people around town, right? Likewise, your employees, even if you're paying them money, are not just doing it for the money.
That's right.
If they think they are, then they are going to quit and go to the next person down the street that's going to offer them $1 more an hour. And so you see a lot of businesses with this really high turnover rate.
Yep.
The way you begin to stem that is by recognizing that people value more than money. Certainly, money is a signal of that dignity that you're wanting to give them, but it's not the whole picture, right? And so if you want loyalty in your company, you have to begin to recognize that the reward for your employees must be more than the pay that you're giving them. And frankly, to recognize that you're probably never going to be able to pay them what they're worth.
Yep.
Right? But you can work diligently to ensure that their lives are fulfilled and that their work is a part of that fulfilled life.
Yeah, no, totally. As having employed quite a few people in my life, my goal was always to help people reach their max capacity.
Yeah, great.
So, as engineers, we all start out in the engineering world. We all start out really thinking it's important to be smart, and then somewhere along the lines, we figure out people don't really care how smart we are. They care if we're awkward at a party. They care if we have the good judgment to do something. They care if we're going to embarrass them or if we're going to be callous to them. And then we begin discovering emotional intelligence, and we begin stabbing at that question.
Yeah.
And then we're like, well, there's still something missing, and we discover it's always about leadership and it's about setting goals. And then that's really management. So we get good at management, and then those of us that reach past management, we realize, oh, it's about motivation. It's about providing the intangible benefits that you get in a nonprofit. So in a nonprofit, you got to start on vision, because that's why people are here. They have to see themselves as part of a bigger whole. I think I love your phrase. They have to see how they can weave their lives into this tapestry of this thing that's bigger than them.
Yeah.
Leadership in business is the same way.
Yes.
And if you're not mastering that vision or the mission, vision and mission are very similar. I think vision is like further out and mission is more discrete. People want to know, am I making a difference? Am I wasting my time here? Or am I making a difference? And I think that's one thing that religion answers directly. Yeah, you help lead this Bible study, or you pray for that person, or you give to this orphan directly because you're making a difference. And I think that my magic wand vision for America and for the world is that we would all continue to do good and make money. And I think, and I'm literally writing a book about this right now. It's called Julie Capital. It's with a new venture I'm starting. So just a teaser here. Starting in about 1980, we switched capitalism from this like kind of benevolent engine that produced good, where you invest money to make something, money for a product, to financialism, which is where you invest money in the stock market and you trade in the stock market to make more money. So it's just money for money's sake, as opposed to money for product's sake.
Okay.
And I kind of intuited this idea, and then as I've dug into it more and more, it's been like deeply profound. In the Bible, they call this the spirit of mammon. So ancient verbology. Sometimes it refers to a spiritual entity, but for them, ideas and spiritual entities were essentially intertwined. So there's a verse that says you can't serve money or mammon and God. You have to make a decision. That's not to say you can't make money. In fact, most of the scriptures, the really good people are providing an economic positive situation for people.
Yeah.
They're delivering people from slavery. They are administering a kingdom, whatever. But this idea of mammon, making money just for money's sake, piling up money for money's sake, I think that's where the danger comes. And people intuit that. But it's a pernicious lie that's in our society. And I think that it snuck its way in, and we need to start teasing it out and say, no, this is good economic behavior because it produces good in people's lives. And this economic behavior is just money for money's sake. So,
yeah, well, I agree. And I think when we look at like the Gospels and we look at Jesus, because Jesus, if you read the Gospels through, you'll find that Jesus gets upset about a lot of things, right?
Right.
And sometimes he's getting upset with rich folks, with folks who have a lot of money. But there's other examples in the Gospel where, for example, Jesus's whole ministry ends up being underwritten by these wealthy women who walk with him around. And what I've found in my reflections on the gospel is that Jesus asked the question, why? Why and what for? And that's where his ire really gets kindled, right? It's like, okay, There's this whole group in the Bible called the Pharisees, and they end up being like the religious hypocrites, right? That's how the gospel writers portray them.
Right.
It's not that Jesus is opposed to morality, because they're really into this morality. The question he continually is asking them is why and what for. Why do you care so much about this? And as it turns out in the Gospels, a lot of times it's for power, it's for prestige, it's for security. It's rarely for the good of the people that they're talking to. And I think that money is the same way in the gospel. There's no inherent sin in money itself. The question that I think, and this goes for all of us, I think, who want to live good and fruitful lives, why do you want money and how will you use that money? Because if you use that money only to gratify like sort of your own ambitions and desires and so forth, like you can absolutely do that. But there are history, People Magazine is full of people who do that, and we can objectively ask the question: are they really happy? And there's lots of interviews with folks who say like it did not make me happy, right? Meanwhile, we look at philanthropists and people who give, and they will talk about this great joy that they have, this sense of peace and accomplishment, and their money helped to fuel that, but it wasn't about the money. It was about what they use that money for. And so that really kind of goes back to that conviction that it's possible to do good and make money. I've done it both ways at this point, right? I've done
good and made no money.
I've done good without money, and I've done good with money, and both of them are good. But it's easier to do it with money. It's easier to do it with money.
100%, it's easier to do with money. Well, all right, we're running out of time with the show here. I want to point everybody to your company. The name of your company is Clean with Commonwealth, right?
Yeah, commercial cleaning with Commonwealth. Our website is www.cleanwithcommonwealth.com.
Cleanwithcommonwealth.com. So if you are interested in, maybe you're somebody that says, hey, I want to explore how I can do good, make money, and help others make money. Luke is a great guy to talk to about that. If you are like, hey, my office is dirty and I need it to be cleaned, Luke is a great guy to talk to about that. And if you're out there saying, I want to be a part of a company that's doing more than just making money, I think also reach out to Luke and tell him you saw him on the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. I'm going to give you the floor for a couple 30 seconds. Do you have any closing thoughts for the team?
We've covered quite a bit. No, I really appreciate the opportunity. Drew, I know that you're using your platform as a way of doing good. And if I could leave on one note, it would be to encourage all of your listeners that there is a great and rich life out there, and it has a lot to do with the way you are giving back to your community. So no matter where you're at in your life, whether you're an employee or an employer, whether you own a business or whether you're volunteering, do good in your community. Love your neighbors, be kind, and it will go well for you.
I love it. Golden rule is the best way to live. Yeah. So with that, we are out.